Okay, now we are going through your post-prelim practice paper 2. Okay, let's take a look. Let's go. 29. The diagram below show blood entering and leaving the brain and the small intestine. So I don't care what organ. Basically, when it enters an organ, okay, your oxygen level should be higher than it exiting, because the cells inside your organs will have carried out a very important process known as respiration. So respiration happens in every single cell, and all living things will need respiration. So you need to be careful also when you write. Okay, when you write, you must tell me what the oxygen is used for, and it's for respiration. Now fill in the bloods. Okay, blanks with W, X, Y, or Z. So very straightforward. W and your Y would be rich in oxygen, and then rich in digested food, okay, would be your small intestine. Okay, and then in comparison, between Y and Z, okay, your answer would be Y. Now the reason is because for this particular answer, when it enters the brain, when you compare Y and Z, I'm just making between these two only, definitely Y will contain more digested food than Z, because as the blood passes through the brain will have used up the digested food for respiration. Over here, the opposite happens. Why? Because your small intestines actually absorb digested food. So because it absorbs digested food, whatever that comes out will have a higher content of digested food. Okay? Next. A patient has a lung condition where his lungs are filled with fluid. He is observed to have a higher heart rate than normal. Explain why. So the filled with fluid part, right, is actually talking about lesser exposed surface area of the lungs. Okay? Alright? So because it is being blocked, you imagine this is your lungs. It is being, okay, the lungs is being filled with fluid. So this part where usually your air sacs will be, there is less exposed surface area to the surrounding air, okay, or the air that enters the lungs. So because of that, gaseous exchange happens at a lower rate. Okay, so when the lungs are filled with water or fluid, there is less exposed surface area, okay, of the air sacs. Hence, less gaseous exchange happens, resulting in less oxygen absorbed into the bloodstream. Okay, the heart beats faster to pump more blood. Okay, or to pump blood faster. Pump blood faster, you will miss out the blood to transport more oxygen around the body. Okay, next, this part. Fish A and organism B live in the same environment. Organism B lives on fish A by attaching onto its gills over here without damaging them. It feeds on the blood in the gills. Now, based on the information provided, explain how B affects gaseous exchange in the fish. Okay? So basically, right, if you take a look at it, it's actually blocking the surface area. So there is less water flowing through the gills, flowing past the gills. So don't forget, for fishes, the water is like our air like that. The oxygen is dissolved in the water that flows over the gills. So if you cover up the gills, like what this animal is doing, it actually reduces, okay, the amount of gaseous exchange. Okay, so less blood. Okay, reaches the gills for less gaseous exchange. Okay, so less oxygen is absorbed into the bloodstream. And less less carbon dioxide is removed from the fish. Please do not use chemical formula CO2. Spell out the whole thing in exam. Next. So because they say gaseous exchange, because it's gaseous exchange, you will need to actually talk about both oxygen and carbon dioxide. It's not enough to just talk about oxygen like how you would usually do. Okay? Next. Okay, the diagram below shows how food and water are transported by the stem to and from different parts. Now, when doing this question, right, you always want to identify your roots and your leaves. Okay? These are the first thing. Roots and leaves. Why? Because they are the source. With that, you can orientate. Your roots is the source where the water comes from. So if you look at the dotted line, where does it go? The dotted line actually originated from H. So I know that H is the roots. And then food is the solid line. Where did this solid line originated from? F. So I know F are the leaves. So what about all the other rest of the things that takes in everything and give nothing at all? They can be two things, okay? They can be two things. Either they are fruits or they are flowers. That's about it. Because they don't produce anything, they only take things, okay? So F and H would be your leaf and your roots. Next. Jane removed a small section of celery stalk at the X. The stalk was then placed in the measuring cylinder with blue water. After 2 hours, the stalk was removed. Jane cut two sections, P and Q, above and below the cut. She labeled the two sections T and U. Okay, so take a look at it. What do you see? Okay. Now, which section T on U was taken from Q? Explain your answer. Now, the answer would be T. Why? Because if you take a look at it, not all the parts are stained blue. So look at Q. Q is actually above, right? Above the cut. So because it's above the cut, it will not be able to receive any blue color water. So therefore, when you cut here, okay, this will show this part. Okay, then you'll be asking me, but how come some of it still have blue? That's because they cut it in a C-shaped manner. Okay, so the fact that some of them is missing blue spots, okay, this part over here refers to this half. Okay, I'm going to color it for you. This part over here is actually this part. This part over here is actually this part that has not been cut. Okay, so therefore the part that has been cut okay, cannot receive any blue water and therefore it is not stained. Alright, so let's translate that into an answer. Okay, C, answer is T, and then your evidence, not all the water carrying tubes on T were stained blue. Okay, so another higher order answer for water carrying tubes is xylem. Alright, water could not, and the reason would be R, water could not travel up the water carrying tubes which were removed at position X. Okay? Okay, continuing with the next question. Okay. So Jane performed another experiment to find out how the number of leaves affect the volume water transported. So this is actually your CV. Now what is your MV? So your MV, what they did was they used a proxy for this. Instead of measuring volume of water transported, they measured the amount of water that is remaining. So they use the remaining volume of water as a proxy for amount of water transported. So the lesser the volume of water there is, the more the water was being transported or lost. Okay? So number of leaves. Now one method of obtaining the results was to compare the volume of water in the measuring cylinder before and after the experiment. After some time, James observed that none of the leaves in ABC were stained blue in section 1. She removed all the stalks and cut section 2 each into 15 parts of equal thickness. Using cut parts in section 2 only, which is just this part, suggests how Jane can conclude which stalk transported the most water. So what happens is that they totally didn't look at this. They only looked at this. So basically, right, they don't want to look at volume of water now. Okay? This is actually a modified question of last year's PSLE question. If you remember, they actually asked how can you measure the rate at which the water was transported from this point to that point. This particular school took that question, modified, and became like that. So what you need to do, right, is to look at which part. So what you do is they cut to equal parts, right? So what you can do is label them. Part, because A is already here, I will use part, maybe P, Q, R, S, etc., etc., same thing. And then you want to see, okay, at which point did it not stain blue, right? So the higher that you find your blue, it tells you the more water is being transported. So why is it that this part is unaffected, right? It says none of the leaves, okay, in ABC were stained blue, okay? So what it means is that the water has not reached over here, okay? Okay, so now, so what you can do is this, right? Like what I told you. So what you need to do is this is question. Okay, count the number of celery parts with the most blue spots for each stalk. Okay, so like what I told you, you cut them and then you number them. Okay? Next. Oh, one more other thing. if you are asked to describe how to carry out an experiment and you cannot remember how to do it, be smart about it. Look within the paper. I'm very sure that there has been 1 or 2 experiment questions within the actual exam paper. Follow the format. So for example, they may say, 3 similar setups. Okay, then you write how many similar setups. And then after that, what is the change variable? So you copy, cut, and paste exactly how the question was phrased inside the PSIE booklet. So just in case if you're not sure, you don't know. Alright, I'm very sure you will still get some marks. Be smart about it. Alright, next. Sheila discovered and deserted island with only 3 types of plants. The location of the island were noted as below. Okay, so one looked at it. The first thing that I'm thinking is probably on dispersion. If not, it's on pollination, but probably on dispersion. She returned to the island a year later and noted the locations of the 3 types of plants. So, even without reading on further, taking a look at it, I roughly could guess. This particular plant over here, the stars, alright, is probably dispersal by explosive mechanism because it is all clustered together. It won't go very far. The one in circle, if you realize, is along the coastline because it's an island. So the surrounding is all water. So this tells me that the circle one is actually dispersed by water. And the final one, this is the one that I need to check. This one, okay, probably by animal because it's quite random and I've got one item that is actually B4. What I was looking for the triangular one, right? I was trying to contemplate and discern whether or not there's a possibility that is dispersed by wind. So when I looked at it, I have one that goes against the general trend, which is all going in this direction, right? But I have one that is not. And furthermore, the question did not mention anything about wind direction. So I think I can safely rule out wind direction is probably animal, okay? With that, I can then continue to read. Not absolute yet, but in my mind, this is what should be formulating. Moving on. Okay? There you go. See, I don't even need to read the question. Identify the method of dispersal. And voila, you are done. So E would be splitting or explosive. Explosive, not explosion. Okay, and then after that, F is animal. Okay, they also accepted wind. So I was right. So when you look inside the paper, it actually put there that wind could be a consideration. Sometimes, maybe the wind suddenly changed direction for a brief moment. Okay? But actually, I tell you, within 1 year, this is not very accurate. You know why? In reality, right, your wind directions, right, actually changes from time to time. It's not definitely the whole year, blow one direction only. Okay? So, this is a little bit iffy. Okay? Next, so animal is still more acceptable. G is would be your water. Okay, B, state a characteristics of the fruit seed of plant F that helps in its seeds dispersal. So F is actually dispersed by animal. Okay, it depends on what you say. If you say by animal, then you have to talk about hooks, being able to hook onto the fur. Okay, or you've got fleshy, juicy, delicious, sweet tasting fruits. Okay, so it depends. I'm going to say it's animal, and I'm going to say that the fruit is fleshy and juicy / sweet. Now, be very careful. Usually, right? Usually, if it's by wind dispersal, I'm going to pick another color. If it's dispersal by wind, usually it's not just the seed. The whole fruit, okay, is being dispersed. Not just the seeds. But if it's explosive, then it's just the seeds that get spit out. Because the pod will split, shooting out the seeds. But if it's wind, it's usually the whole fruit. Like your ansana, the whole fruit. Okay? Like your dandelion. All this is the whole entire fruit. Okay? Next, okay, when she returned to the same island later, she discovered tall buildings built on it. Okay, now she noted there are 3 types of plants as shown. Observe that plant F did not reproduce well after the tall buildings were built. Base your answers and explain why. So basically, right, ask yourself, buildings, where do you see the word buildings? Which topic? Probably we talk about deforestation and we talk about men coming into into destroying the natural habitats such as your forests, okay, and whatnot of your animals. So because of this building or buildings, you have actually caused deforestation in this area. And what happens is that you reduce your animals' habitat. So because of that, the dispersal rate also drops because since your seed is dispersed by your animals, okay? Now, there can also be another reason for it. If you choose wind, right? F can be dispersed by wind. The tall buildings will have blocked the wind. So because it blocks the wind, the flow of the wind, okay, it will not carry your seeds so far away, okay? So it will be, okay, when the land was cleared for the tall buildings, the animals that dispersed the fruits dispersed F lost their habitat. Okay, so this reduced their food and shelter. Hence, there were less animals to disperse F. Okay? So the whole idea is you have to tell me how does removal of their habitat cause them to decrease in numbers. Okay? Next. The setup below shown was used to find out how different colors of light, okay, so this is actually your change variable, affect the rate of photosynthesis. Alright? Now, 4 identical setups were placed in a dark room and each plant had a different color light shone on it. The distance moved by the air bubble in each setup was measured after a fixed time. So when you take a look at it, right, okay, what is over here? Here is actually water. So as remember this class, what you need to do when you first get your paper, write down the word equation for photosynthesis and respiration. Remember, photosynthesis and respiration word equation, they are opposite of each other. Okay, that's one. So we know that when you photosynthesize, you will take in water. So since this is actually water over here, when your plant take in water for photosynthesis because of the presence of light, it will actually use up the water over here. So because of that, your bubble will actually go up. Okay? So, therefore, they take a look over here. So obviously, the more water it uses up over here, the greater the distance will be traveled by the air bubble. This is a novel way of measuring things. Usually, you see number of bubbles, right, in water plants. But actually, this is a very common secondary school question paper. In Set 4, O levels. Trust me, I teach it all the time. So basically, what happens here is that the bubble will go up. So in this case, because blue is the one that is being used, that moves the most, it tells me that the amount of water here is being used the most. And hence, rate of photosynthesis is the greatest. Alright? I've unpacked this whole experiment for you. Now let's go on. Other than the size of the glass tube, state 2 variables that should be kept constant for the investigation. Now, there are quite a few. Okay, you can say that distance of lamp from okay, light intensity, okay, is one of it. Okay, another one could be number of leaves. Okay, number of leaves, all right, on the plant or type of plant. Also, another one could be temperature, because your temperature actually affects rate of photosynthesis. Just in case you all didn't know, for sure temperature is correct. Okay, next, based on the results, which colored light resulted in the highest rate of photosynthesis? I've already explained to you. Your answer would be CER. C is actually C. E would be evidence, right? I told you must quote exactly the distance okay, sorry, blue light. My apologies, we are. Okay, C should be blue light, as explained earlier. And the evidence would be the distance moved by the air bubble was the greatest. So you have to compare and contrast. Okay, so why? So the greatest amount, so the reason would be this is due to the fact that the rate of photosynthesis was greatest for blue light, and hence most amount of water was taken up for photosynthesis. Okay. Next, state why the distance traveled by the air bubble was 2 cm when no light was shining on the plant. Okay. So basically, even though when no light is shining, water vapor will still be lost, because the tiny openings will still be there. It doesn't disappear. It's just whether is it open bigger or open smaller. So you will just have to say that, okay, water vapor is lost through the tiny openings. Okay, so some water was lost through the stomata to the surroundings as water vapor. Okay. Moving on. Organism L is commonly observed to be growing on tree trunks. It is made of two organisms, A and F. This is probably living together under adaptations. Okay, so remember adaptation, I said before already. 3 things. Okay, increase food, increase defense, or increase rate of reproduction. That's about it. Alright. Okay, so the table below shows characteristics of organism A and F. So we know that A has green pigment. If I see green pigment, I know it's chlorophyll and photosynthesis will occur. Produces oxygen, voila, it actually coincides with photosynthesis. Roots cannot absorb water well. This is a disadvantage. I wonder why. Organism F, okay, this one, no green pigment, cannot make food, but traps water easily. So in a way, you realize that this actually complements this very well, right? And this one cannot make food, but this fella can. This one, no chlorophyll, but this one has. So in fact, the both of them actually can coexist very well, with A providing F with food and F providing A with water to make the food, to carry out photosynthesis. Okay? So from the information given, how do organism A and F benefit by living together? Okay, so what is the benefit for A? So remember, I told you already, if it's not food, it's defense. Not defense, then it's reproduction. So in this case, it has to be, okay, food. So F provides water for A to photosynthesize. Okay, F. A provides food for F. Done. So they benefit each other in that manner. Next. B. Okay. Wayne carried out an investigation to find out about air quality in his neighborhood. He prepared 3 sticky cardboards and placed them in 3 different locations in his neighborhood. 24 hours later, he retrieved the 3 cardboards and observed how different amounts of pollutants collected on each cardboard as shown. So basically very simple. If you ask me one look at this, even before I go on, I will study this and I try to deduce how to interpret this result. The board with the most amount of pollutants, most amount of spots, is the most polluted one. And the one with the least amount of items stuck onto it is the least polluted one. Based on the information given, which location 1, 2 or 3 will organism L grow the best? Okay, so you take a look. It says here organism L grows well with little air pollution. So once again, this is a CER question. Okay, so C, location 3. E, remember you have to quote exactly what you see, the amount of particles, also known as your pollutants, collected or stuck on the board was the least. So reason, what does this suggest? This suggests that 3 is the what it says here, least, 3 we follow, okay, has the least polluted air. Okay, done. Suggest one way to improve the reliability of Wayne's results. So reliability, there is 2 ways of doing reliability. Nowadays, I realize that I'm just afraid they may twist the question. They may say, besides repeating his experiment, state another way. The other way is to actually increase sample size. Okay, the second way is the repeat experiment at least 3 times. Okay, and take the average. Now, how to increase sample size? Just in case they ask you, so for every location, instead of sticking just 1 board, you stick multiple boards in 1 location. It's not have more location, because you're only testing 3 locations, nothing more. It's like you're testing Toa Payoh, Sengkang, and Tampines. You cannot say I want to test Jurong and no. Only Sengkang, Toa Payoh is, and I can't remember, and Tampines, is it the last one I said? You repeat the number of boards. So instead of having 1 board, you have multiple boards. That's how you increase sample size. Alright? So I'm not going to write the repeat the experiment because you have already talked about that many times. I want to give the sample size answers. Okay? So increase the sample size by putting more than 1 board in each location. Okay, increase sample size. D, state 1 example of man's activity that could have led to the results obtained for location 2. So location 2 is very polluted. So remember when you talk about air pollution, right? We learned that it's actually through burning of things. It can be deforestation, it could be many things, okay? But the most prominent one is actually burning of fossil fuels. That's the worst. So this is the golden standard, burning of fossil fuels. When you burn fossil fuels, right? Okay, you release a lot of pollutants. Okay? Question 34. Study the information about organism X, Y, W, X, Y, and Z. Okay, we are on practice paper set 2, just in case you all don't know. So they tell you already, W is producer, X is prey only, this is predator, prey and predator. So don't need to say already. You look at this because it's the predator only, most probably this is the apex. So apex means, okay, it only feeds on others. Okay, so this is the apex predator, but one side. Now, because the producer is the one that everything originates from, so this person or this organism will be the one that actually needs to, will actually be the one that will start the food chain, okay? So we will start here. This is actually W. And then from W, we draw an arrow. This shows us the direction of the flow of energy. Alright? So W then goes to, so they tell you this one is prey only. So if it's prey only, it is not a predator. It must be feeding on your producer. So this is actually X. And then after that, it will definitely be eaten by your apex, which is your Y. Okay, and then we have this missing link here, which is your Z, that is both a prey and a predator. So if it's a prey, it will be eaten by your Y, but if it's a predator, it will be eating X. Okay, that's the thing. Alright, next. Explain how decomposers benefit organism W. Okay, so basically W is a producer. When it comes to producers, benefiting producers, we need to remember that it is fertilizers that they need. Alright, so decomposers, they break down. Remember, break down dead matter. Okay, so decomposers break down dead matter into simpler substances which are absorbed by W as nutrients. Okay? So this is actually, you need to know, decomposers and your digestive system, there is a similarity. The similarity between the both of them is that the process of it is that they both break down more complex substances into simpler substances. Alright? Next, the diagram shows organism Q. Its body resembles the leaves of P. Okay? Now, other than having fewer P to feed on, suggests another reason why the population of organism Q decrease when there is a drastic decrease in the population of P. So basically, what you do with wet food chain when it comes to this kind of increase-decrease relationship, I always tell you all this, draw arrows to represent the population change. So in P, they said that, okay, P decreases. So when P decreases, Q will actually go down as well, and then your bird will actually go down. So why your Q will decrease? Okay, other than having fewer plants, so you cannot use this. So another one that you need to see is you need to look at the question stem to look for clues. Resembles leaves of plant P. So you need to remember, I have told you this many times. When it comes to adaptation, there are three important things. Okay, it's either increase in food, increase in defense, or increase in reproduction. So these are the three things that you need to know. Any increase in this, and therefore any adaptation, you want to increase in either one of these. So in this case, it tells you it resembles the leaves of pea. So obviously, it wants to be camouflaged. Now, when you talk about camouflage, you also need to be careful. You need to see whether camouflage, is it to get more food or is it for defense? Why? Because it could be a camouflage and you still want to increase in food. For example, if you are an Arctic fox, you are white, the fur is white in color to blend with the snow so that your prey will not be able to see the fox easily. So that is actually an increase, that is to help it to increase in food. However, if you're looking at something that's a bit smaller size and weaker, more or less it is to blend in with the surroundings so that it doesn't get seen or spotted by your predators. On top of that, you need to add in the last important word, which is and be eaten by predators. That is very important. Okay? So you have to say, that Q would not be able to blend into the leaf. Okay, of P. Hence, Q would be spotted easily by predators and eaten. Okay? Next, Jia Xuan wanted to study which material or block absorbs water the fastest. She put 3 blocks made of different materials into 1000 cm cube of water. Okay, so what is your change variable? Please do not be complacent. In every experiment, the least annotation that you need to do is to annotate for change variable and measured variable. Now, the reason why this is the case is because your change variable, measured variable is essential for everything, be it your aim, your conclusion, or even just to understand what is happening. All right, so by correctly identifying these two, it will help you actually to frame your answers. And in your answers, more often than not, you will need to include your change variable or your measured variable as part of your answer. So please do not be complacent. Okay? Now, each block was removed and the volume left in each container was measured. Okay? So these are your blocks. Now, the results of water is shown. So what you would see here is that more or less, it seems like the one that has less water is actually Z. So what Jia Xuan can conclude. Now, whenever you see the word conclude, it must answer the aim. Okay? So look at here. Which material absorbs the water the fastest? So you need to be able to link this down to the bottom part here, the aim. That is the aim. Okay, so what can she conclude? Okay, the block in set up Z absorbs the most amount of water. Okay? Next, explain your answer in A. Alright? So this is a little bit like a CER kind of question. So you have to show your claim, which is actually Z already, the block in Z. So you're actually left with E and R. What is your evidence and what is your reason? Okay? So you would say that the amount of water left in the container in setup Z is the least. So make sure you use comparison words. It is very important to use the correct one. So during exams, train yourself. Make sure that if it's a CER question, make sure that if there is any comparison, okay, you have to use comparison terms. All right, okay. So hence, okay, at first hour, hence the most amount of water was absorbed by the block in Z. Okay, and then at 12 hours, the decrease in amount of, sorry, I don't have enough space already, I'm shifting it down here. Water left was the greatest for block in setup Z. Okay. Now in this case, you need to actually state both timings. Okay. Just to let you know, timing is very important. Don't say I never say. Especially when it comes to trend questions. Last year, PSLE, if you didn't state the timing, you don't get marks. Even though your trend is correct, especially when there are two different trends. Say from 1 minute to 5 minutes, it increases. And then from above 5 minutes to 10 minutes, it decreases. So because of this difference in trend, if you just say, oh, something decrease, but you don't, I don't know, are you talking about from 0 to 5 minutes, or are you talking about from more than 5 minutes to 10 minutes? So because of that, 0 marks, the whole 2 marks was lost. Time is very important. You must state it. Must. No negotiation. Okay? The diagram below shows 3 batteries and a light bulb. Okay? In the diagram above, complete the circuit so that the bulb would be the brightest. So now you need to be very careful. Whenever you see a bulb that's like that, they want you to join make sure you join one of the wires from the side and another wire down from the tip. And make sure no gaps. So they say brightest, right? Since there are 3 batteries, you need to arrange the 3 batteries in series. Okay? So it's actually very straightforward. It's just, okay, sorry. It's this way. One to the side, make sure there's no gap. And the next thing is make sure the positive is connected to the negative and the negative is connected to the positive for your batteries. It's very important. Okay, that's about it. Make sure there's no gap. Alright, moving on. The diagram shows how P, Q, R, S, and T are arranged in a house consisting of 4 rooms. The living room, the kitchen, and the 2 bedrooms. Alright, so this is the thing. Now, state 2 disadvantage of using the circuit shown on diagram page 13. So when you take a look at here, you will realize one thing. Okay, what is the disadvantage? So you trace. To do this, there's no way you trace. Okay, so when there is a gap here, what happens? When there's a gap here, because this is the main line. Remember I told you all there are main line and subline. There is no alternative road. Okay, your electricity stops here. It cannot go beyond this point if my P fuses, there is a gap. So the rest of your bulbs will not light up. Okay? So when bulb P fuses, the circuit is open. And the rest of the bulbs will not light up. Okay? Okay, so what is the second disadvantage? Okay? So when you look at here, right, the second disadvantage is that it's not just the brightness. You do realize that there is only how many switches? 1. There is only 1 switch. So basically, you cannot say I want to control individual rooms. There's only 1 switch. It's either you turn off the entire house or you turn on the entire house. So this kind of system is not no good. It is good when you want to have a master switch. Say you're already in bed and you want to turn off the entire house. This is excellent. Okay, but other than that, I don't think you can actually separately control. Alright, so the lights, okay, or the bulbs in the individual room cannot be turned on individually. Okay? There you go. Actually, the answer is here. Right? I would think so. Okay. 1 switch is added to the kitchen and another to the bedroom 1 so that the bulb in each room can be switched on and off independently. Indicate the positions of these 2 switches. So I suggest doing exam highlight. In fact, write out. Sometimes we don't quite recognize the word 2, you know. Write it out. And when I say check your answers, right? Let's just say you managed to finish early and you're like, Mr. Chong say check answer, check what answer? Check all these. Make sure you have the number of bulbs drawn correctly. Okay? Don't lose marks on all these little things. Okay? By marking each with a cross on the diagram. So remember, when I told you this before, I said whenever you want to actually put a switch to control a certain bulb, you put it as close as possible to the bulb that you want to control, and that's about it. Don't think too much, okay, on that particular pathway. So in this case, if you look at it, they wanted to put for what? R, right? So R runs from here to here. This is the pathway. I will put the switch here. Okay, that's about it. Don't need to think so much. But they said use cross, so use a cross. And then from the kitchen, the same thing, right? The kitchen is here. Okay, so I'll put here. So which line can I put? I can put this whole thing. No issues. But of course I put it here lah. If I put at this side, it's a bit squeezy. No point. Alright? Let's go. So some birds huddle when the surrounding temperature drops to negative 80 degrees. Guo Ping wants to find out if huddling helps to keep the birds warm. He has a bundle of test tubes held together with a rubber band and a single test tube. All test tubes contain equal amounts of hot water at 60 degrees Celsius. The investigation is held up in a classroom. Alright? So you have a probe. The temperature inside test tube P, Q, and R is recorded every minute for 10 minutes using a data logger. His results are shown. Guo Ping makes a statement. My results suggest that huddling keeps the middle bird warmer. Based on the graph, states are evidence that supports his statement. Okay? So when you take a look at it, right? Okay, I want you to see what is the evidence over here from the graph. So you see Q is actually on the outside over here, and P is in the middle. So based on the graph, right, both of them, when you look at every single minute, so minute 1, minute 2, minute 3, minute 4, you will realize that with every single minute, your test tube Q's temperature decreases faster, is at lower than your P. P is over here, Q is over here. So this shows that indeed, alright, the one in the center actually keeps the middle bird warmer. So how do you actually put this? So you have to say that test tube P lost heat slower than test tube Q. Okay, at every minute. Okay, or you can also say P was at a lower temperature, higher temperature at every minute, or higher temperature than Q. Okay. Alright, next question. On the graph, draw a line and label it to predict the results of test tube R. So if you take a look at test tube R, okay, when you look at this question, right, I'm going to unpack it a little bit more. So in this case, it's actually the amount of exposed surface area. So when you compare between test tube P and test tube R, definitely I would say that P has less exposed surface area to lose heat to. So it will definitely be at a lower temperature as compared to R. However, okay, in this case, this is what they're talking about, exposed surface. Now, I just want to bring your attention to, because there is this part whereby the penguin is black. Okay? The part whereby the penguin is black is about absorbing heat. It's not that heat, you cannot say black is a better conductor of heat. It's not. When they talk about color, right, it's about absorption of heat. So be very careful. I just want to point this out. Okay, but in this experiment, it's not talking about that. It's talking about exposed surface area. Okay? So draw a line to predict how. So R has a greater exposed surface area. So because its exposed surface area is greater, it will lose heat at a faster rate. So the temperature, right, for sure, right, if you compare to Q. So when I'm going to color it, for Q, right, it can lose heat, alright, in all the red areas. The one in blue, which I'm coloring now, you cannot see, is actually still not exposed. So when you compare the amount of exposed surface area between Q and R, you know that Q has a Q has a lower exposed surface area. So R has a bigger exposed surface area because in fact all the areas here are exposed and can lose heat. So the temperature for R should drop even lower. So what you need to take note of it must start at 60 degrees, okay? Because they are all at the same starting point. And it should be slower at every time point. Okay, something like this. Alright, next. Oh, and don't forget to label R, very importantly. Okay? And do use a pencil just in case you make mistake. Now, birds outside the huddle takes turn to move to the inner parts, the huddle. Suggest how this behavior helps this bird survive in the cold. So remember once again, when we talk about adaptation, there are three things. It's either increase in food, increase in defense, or increase in reproductivity. So in this case, it's not about food, it is not about reproduction. The obvious one is the last one, which is actually about increasing defense. This time round is actually defense in terms of against the cold weather. Alright, so you have to answer it in that terms. Okay, so what can you say? You can say that, so his heat is lost faster from the birds on the outside. To the cold surrounding. So remember, it's always from where to where. Hence, by moving to the inner parts, the exposed surface area of the bird will decrease, slowing down the rate of heat loss. So in this case, you don't have to say from where to where anymore, because you have already told me already from the birds to the cold surrounding. So because you have mentioned it once already, it's a good enough answer. You don't have to repeat again. Alright, so by moving inside, you decrease surface area. Alright, so this is slightly different from your simplified answer key. This is actually a more detailed answer. So please pen it down. Okay, it's not the same. Next. Okay, I'm going to pause here for a while for you to pen it down, because this is different from your simplified answer key. This is a more detailed answer. Next. Rita visited a country during winter. She got out a bus parked in an open air car park. When the heater in the bus was turned on, she observed that the inner surface of the bus soon turned foggy. Now, this is obviously a very familiar question. By now, you should know that it's got to do with water cycle. Okay? And when you see the word foggy, misty, clouds, you know straight away smoke. Okay? Whatever it is, you know that straight away it's got to do with water droplets. If it has to be water droplets because you're able to see them. It cannot be water vapor because water vapor is invisible to the eye. Now, these water droplets would then signify that condensation has occurred. So you need to think about it. So there are two aspects of water cycle: evaporation and condensation. So, but this question, they are focusing on condensation. Now, when it comes to condensation, the most key important thing is to identify the two things. Number one, where is the source of warmer water vapor? Where is the source of water vapor? Number two, where is the site or the place of condensation that has taken place? So it is a lot easier to identify the second thing, which is where is the place of condensation. So the place of condensation is on the place where you find the mist or the foggy part. So in this question statement, it is your bus window, okay, inner surface of the bus window, right? So this tells me that this is the cooler surface. That's it, because condensation has occurred to it. So where is your warmer vapor now? So your warmer water vapor cannot be on the outside, right? Because the warmer vapor, water vapor, it needs to be inside the bus in order to touch the cooler surface that is on the inside. So straight away, I know that the warmer water vapor came from the inside of the bus, okay? And this tallies. Why? She said the heater in the bus. So the warmer water vapor must be in the bus as well. So what happened in this case is that, so I'm going to draw a line to divide it. This is the inner and this is the outer part of the bus. So outside is actually very cold. Remember, it's winter time. Everything is very, very cold. So what happened is that it causes your glass to lose heat to the outside and become really, really cold. Now it provides a cool surface for your warmer water vapor. So where did your warmer water vapor came from? Don't forget you have a what? Heater. Your heater will heat up the surrounding, causing the surrounding air to become warmer. So this warmer water vapor will eventually touch the cooler surface of your cold glass, lose heat to it, and then it will condense into tiny water droplets. And this is what caused the fog. Okay, so this is one of those very common exam questions, as you can see from all the different papers that we have done. Almost all the papers have at least one condensation question or one question on water cycle. So just please memorize whatever I tell you. Do the steps and you should be able to get full marks for this type of questions. There's no reason why you shouldn't. So warmer water vapor. So some of you are wondering, why must we put warmer? Because later you're going to say cooler surface. If there's a cooler surface, there must be a warmer something, right? Okay, in the inner surrounding of the bus, touched the cooler surface, cooler inner surface of the glass or of the window, lost heat and condensed into water droplets. Now you can put a bracket here to like a foggy, so that they know that the mist or the fog is due to the water droplets. I've mentioned this many times as well. Okay, moving on. Rita drew a star on the foggy windows, okay, with her finger. Now, an hour later, the star disappeared even though no one wiped it away. Explain why. Okay, so what happens is that after a while, it no longer becomes foggy because the surrounding water droplets, don't forget, your bus is getting heated up. Okay, your bus is getting heated up. So after a while, what happens is that the water vapor, the water droplets on the glass will gain heat, okay, from the warmer surrounding and evaporate, okay, inside the bus because of the heater. You have a heater inside the bus. So the inner surrounding will just get warmer as time goes by, okay? So how can we pen this down? Right, the water droplets on the window gained heat from the warmer inner surrounding of the bus and evaporated. Okay, so if they tell you that the water droplets has disappeared or anything to the extent, it has to be because it has gained heat from the surrounding and evaporated. Next, the diagram shows a toy. When a elastic band is pulled and then released, the wheel would spin before flying off. Razik wants to find out how the number of spins of wheel changes when the elastic band is pulled to different ends. So this is his aim, okay? And then straight away, we know that this is your change variable. This is your, oh, I'm sorry, the other way around, my bad. This is your measured variable and this is your change variable, okay? So as you can see, like what I told you, you need to actually always draw an arrow so you know how to read. So as the length of elastic band increase, okay, what happens to your number of time of wheels that spin? It also increases, right? So it's a positive relationship. Explain in terms of energy changes how the length of elastic band when pulled, which is D, affects the number of time the wheel spins. Alright, so when you take a look at it, energy changes. Be very careful. I want you all to be very sure before you answer anything to do with energy or forces. Pause. Are you answering an energy question or are you answering a force question? Because many of the times students get confused because there's the gravitational potential energy, which is very similar to your gravitational force, right? But they're actually two different things and students get very confused. And the other one that's confusing is the elastic spring force and your elastic potential energy. So you need to be very careful so you don't write the wrong thing. This can happen to the best of any students, to the best students, right? This can happen. So you must take the time to really think and be very conscientious when you're doing this question. It is talking about energy. So I should be saying things like elastic potential energy, kinetic energy, sound energy, heat energy, and not things like gravitational force. That's wrong. Or elastic spring force. That's wrong. Okay? Now, so when you look at this, right? So you first need to tell me that when the length of elastic band is pulled, what increases actually? It is actually because it's elastic band, right? So it's got potential energy. Okay, so inside there is probably some spring or coil system, all right? It will increase the elastic potential energy, okay, of your this particular elastic band. Because you pull it further, you're stretching the band further. The further you stretch it, the more elastic potential energy this elastic band has. So increase in EPE, elastic potential energy. Now, this EPE would then be converted to, when it spins, right, to more KE. Of what? Of the wheel. Now, whenever you're doing energy conversion, I cannot stress this anymore. You must tell me who does the energy belong to. So, for example, increase in EPE belongs to the elastic band. Okay? And then after that, increase in KE belongs to the wheel. You must mention that in your answer. It's a must. It's no negotiation. Okay, so how can we pen this down? So as the length of the elastic band increases, the amount of EPE, elastic potential energy of the elastic band increases. This enables more EPE of the elastic band to be converted to more KE, kinetic energy of the wheel. Hence, increasing the number of wheel spins. Okay, now it's important to talk about the number of wheel spins this time round because they say how does it affect? You have to answer this, and you also have to tell me that it's only when the length increases then the amount of elastic potential energy increases, which is then converted to more kinetic energy of the wheel. Next, suggest how using the same wheel helps to make the investigation a fair test. Alright? So this is to ensure that the results or the number of wheel spin. So we always talk about the measured variable. So the results slash number of wheel spins or spins, okay, we short form it, is only due to the distance d or the length of elastic band stretch and not the mass of the wheel. Okay, so you think about it, what else can change? Which attribute could change just because you change the wheel? So one of it could be the mass of it. So when you have a different mass, obviously you will need to actually have a greater force, or you need more energy to spin something that is heavier, right? So that could affect, so it doesn't become a fair test anymore. So this is a common template that you can use. Remember, so it's to ensure the change variable is only whatever you want to measure, whatever you want to investigate. And then after that, the second one is talking about what is the additional change variable that you're going to introduce. Next. Edison designed a setup to free his pet hamster when he went on a holiday. Okay? In the diagram 1, object moves to the right to allow pet food to dispense when the food tray is empty. So when you take a look at this, let's unpack. Let's just see how does this work first. So obviously, you want to feed your pet hamster, right, when he's away. So when you think about it, why is it that this thing will work? So when your spring moves up, there's this thing called copper contact. So when the copper contact actually touches these 2 points here, it will actually cause your circuit to be closed. So when this circuit is closed, this particular iron rod now becomes an electromagnet. So when it's an electromagnet, right, it will actually attract, okay, your object Y to the side, okay, or maybe repel it to this side. Okay, it says to move right to the right, okay, and then when it moves towards the right, it will cause the balls to fall through. So this is a very interesting experiment. Usually we see that your electromagnet should attract something. So in this case, right, it is a very novel question, a good question in my opinion, that they have used repelled, something that we've not seen. So by repelling, right, it will push object Y this side, creating this gap. Okay? So what happens is that when your food tray is now fully filled with food, the mass increases. And so this mass acts on the spring to compresses it. The whole system then goes downwards. And what will happen is, as you can see, there is a gap. So when there is a gap, what actually happens now is that this is no longer activated, okay? And then your object Y moves back into position. So don't forget, this is an iron rod after all. So actually, just for object Y to be attracted to iron rod, it just needs to be a magnet, a normal magnet, right? Because this is iron rod, right? Okay. So in the diagram, object Y moves to the left to stop the foot from dropping when the foot is fully filled. Identify what is object Y. So object Y is actually a magnet. That's it. This is a very good novel question. For all you know, it may really come out, so it's good that you know. Explain how the setup tool in diagram stops food from dropping into the food tray when it is fully filled. So in this case, it is not about closing the circuit, it's about breaking the circuit. So once again, use CEO to help you answer this question. So C stands for what? Okay, close or open your circuit. E stands for whether electric current can flow through, and O is what's the outcome. So obviously in this case, your outcome is that you need object Y to be attracted to your iron rod, and that seals off the gap that was previously here. Okay, so you would say that when the tray is filled, its mass increases and compresses the spring. So when it compresses, what happened? Then it moves down, right? The copper contact moves away from the circuit, and the circuit, first C, becomes open. Okay, then after that, electricity is not able to flow through. Is not able to flow through, and the iron rod is demagnetized. Okay, so then after that, object Y will then be attracted to the iron rod. Bracket magnetic material. Okay? Alright? That's it. So you have to write so much just for 2 marks. I'm not saying it's important, but I'm telling you that your MCQ is very crucial. Just in case, it's very easy to lose half mark here, half mark there. But there is no other way. There is really no other way. Alright? Next. Edison wanted more pet food to be dispensed into the food tray. By changing either the food tray or the springs, suggest one modification to his setup. Explain in terms of forces how it works. Okay? So remember, you wanted more food. The key idea here is more pet food. So more pet food here now is that you want to actually make it more difficult for your spring to go down. Okay, so you have to find some way to decrease the mass of this, isn't it? So that more food can be added to this in order to get it the same mass. So what can you decrease? Decrease the mass of your food tray. So that now you need more mass of food to drop. Okay, so we can use a lighter food tray. And your explanation would be that by using a food tray with less mass, a greater force is required to compress the springs. Okay, so what this means is that hence more food can drop onto the tray before the spring is compressed enough or shortened enough to separate the copper contact from the circuit.